in the heat input due to improper combustion, the available heat on the charge would be reduced to as much as 35%. If the combustion air was at 21 degrees and at 21 and 20% of your heat charge would be reduced if the air is preheated to 600 degrees centigrade. So if the air is heated up, you will have a better performance of the furnace compared to if you are using it at room temperature. So proper combustion can be attained by ensuring proper fuel-air ratio, that is one first thing. And in the case of liquid fuels, by proper atomization of the fuel. How is the atomization done? It is by the pressure of the air which comes in, and the fuel has to be, all the molecules have to be formed to get you the proper atomization. So modern burners like this, if you all know, self-proportioning burners are there, which are available for Westman and all these people. So have a preset fuel air ratio, and any increase or decrease in their air ratio, the flow will automatically proportion the combustion air flow and ensure proper combustion. Systems are also available where changes in the fuel flow relation are sensed and transmitted back to your control valve in the airline, which appropriates your airflow. So these systems are also available today as an upgradation. Oil preheating systems, as you all know, the hotter the oil, the less viscous it is. So the less viscous it is, you will have a better atomization of the oil that is going into your furnace. So atomization of the fuel implies forming of tiny droplets of the fuel. The pressure of the fuel and its viscosity, as also the pressure of the air, govern the extent of the atomization. So we are talking of the two things. The finer the droplets, the better is your combustion. The heat input to the furnace by combustion of the fuel is practically taken up by the furnace refractory, partially lost through walls and partially lost with the flue gases which are going out of your furnace in an oil-fired furnace. The following table will show you a typical heat balance. That's heat source and distribution with cold air. So as you can see, the heat received fuel, heat supplied is 100%, waste gases, heat received is 61%, loss through walls is 11.7%, and heat to the stock is 26.9%. So it is seen from the above that it is a major chunk of the input heat losses through the waste gases. As you can see from this, waste gases take away most of your heat of the furnace. As the heat lost to the walls and refractories will not change for the given furnace, all the recovered heat would be available to heat the charge. If you can take that heat back and reuse it for your furnaces. The heat is recovered by means of what you call recuperators. So these are heat exchangers which are used for preheating the combustion air before it enters your furnace. Now heat content of air BTUs per cubic foot at various temperatures is given in this chart. So another development was the control of the furnace pressure. So operating the furnaces at a slightly higher pressure would give you a better performance compared to the normal pressures that you are using in the furnace. This will, what does this do? Why do you have a higher pressure in your furnaces? It will not allow any ingress of air into your chamber. And the moment there is no ingress of air in your chamber, your fluctuation of temperatures will not be there. And your heat will be given properly to your equipment or the material. So that is why a slightly positive pressure in your chamber would give you better results on your components. But this also should be monitored, because a very high pressure in the furnace will again give you a reverse effect on your, there is a lot of fluctuation in your temperatures again. So maintaining this proper furnace pressure also contributes to effective heat transfer to the charge. As this is governed by providing proper draught systems have been developed for automatically controlling the damper systems in your furnaces. So this also can be done through, when your pressure is there, you can govern it and you can arrange your damper systems. It is done all electrically. Whereas in electrically heated furnaces, the new development was on the higher temperatures. What you had was silicon carbide elements and the molybdenum disilicide elements. The silicon carbide was basically made for using temperatures up to 1400, and beyond 1400 what you would be using is molybdenum disilicide elements. So under the atmosphere, however, this is only in air. Under atmosphere, all these temperatures tend to come down, because the more the under atmospheres, other than oxidizing, the operating temperatures of the molybdenum disilicide tends to drop down quite a lot. So what you are using at 1800, you may not be able to use it even up to 1300 degrees centigrade in certain oxidizing atmospheres. So molybdenum, these elements, however, are only drawback is that they are very brittle in nature. The moment they are heated up, a slight vibration or a slight jerk to the furnace will, all your elements will be out, because then the replacement is in high cost. So we have to be very careful while using these elements, that is molybdenum disilicide and the silicon carbide. And the silicon carbide elements again are prone to age. So as the time factor goes up, they tend to have a their resistance changes, and as the resistance changes with time, the electrical system that you have should be so designed that it can take care of the resistance change, or else your power systems will go up. Then the recently development was the induction heating systems. I mean, all of you will be aware that they are the latest as far as heat treatment and melting is concerned. These are more reliable, these are much more faster compared to the other systems of heating. What you were doing in few hours can be done in a few minutes, provided you have a continuous job of the same type. Because for each type of a job, you will need another separate induction coil. So for each of the jobs, you should have a separate induction coil. So that is how you will, if your job is of a continuous nature, then you will have, it's a very good system, but it's more expensive, but a good system. Then you had induction furnaces, then you got fluidized bed furnaces, which came up as a new subject and a new line, which is fluidized bed. But again, the same thing was, it was to be used only where you have a one type of a job. Because for each job variation, you would have to change the flow of the gas, the pressure, and all those things, and you need an expert to do that job for you. So for a continuous single job type of a job, these type of furnaces are very good, and they will be highly accurate, and you will get better results. Then the last development which has come now is the vacuum heat treatment. As you are all aware, what you do is up to -3, 10 raised to -3 torque is the normal range that you will be using for heat treatment. So you have no oxidation in the heat vacuum furnaces. There is, you get a near net shear processing, because there is less of warpage. In most of the furnaces we have a lot of warpage, and in these vacuum furnaces you don't have warpage. You will have a clean operation. There is no oil and dust and all those things, because these chambers are all clean chambers. You have got very high accuracy in the control and the uniformity of the temperatures, and they are very environmental friendly compared to oil usage and gas usage and all that. So it's very environment friendly. In the areas of gas nitrating, what Gajaria Saab is doing, and the gas carburizing, the latest development is the plasma form of gas nitrating. Now what is this plasma system? It is basically comprises a sealed retort which is under vacuum, and the retort is externally heated by a conventional heating system. The charge is placed inside the retort and forms the cathode for the plasma system, and your retort forms the anode of the plasma system. The retort is heated up, and the required gas, nitrogen for nitriding, nitrogen and hydrogen for nitriding, or methane for carburizing is introduced, depending on whether you are doing nitriding or carburizing. And a pulsed voltage is applied between the charge and the retort, and the gas is ionized and forms a plasma. The charged ions of the gas migrate and surround the charge, forming a corona, which is normally seen in a plasma nitriding equipment. And being ionized, the gas diffuses into the metal. The advantages of this is that accurate control of the case depth is there as far as plasma nitriding is concerned. Operations are at much lower temperatures compared to the conventional nitriding system. This means that the core properties are not at all affected and subsequent treatment is eliminated as far as plasma nitriding is concerned. Uniform nitriding is complicated parts with thin sections and small holes is also possible with plasma nitriding. And again, just like vacuum, it is an environmentally clean operation. Then we come to the next stage, that is the control systems. I think an expert on the control systems is here with us, Mr. Shinde from Microcon. They are doing jobs from Electrotherm and they're doing a lot of automation of a lot of